welcome to Jackalopes of Fire. I'm your host, Cilla, and with me is my co-host, Chuck. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yes.
So you may notice that we're trying something a little different this week again.
We keep trying these new things. One of these is going to work.
Hopefully this experiment will work. What you're looking at is
A wall.
the start of what will hopefully become our studio.
Yeah.
Right now it's
a dining room.
in progress.
Yeah.
It's in the process of being built up.
That's right. We have the table we want. We're going to put in a backdrop. We're going to cover this. We're going to cover that.
Save some surprises for him. You don't have to tell him all our plans.
Oh, there is a surprise coming.
So, anyway, hopefully this will work out, and it'll look good, and so...
She's cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
I'm way past cautiously.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Mostly because these are mostly my plans, and she knows how my plans tend to go.
So, I just came from the mall.
Why? Okay, first of all, it is Saturday. It's November 30th.
It is.
Which means it's the day after Black Friday. So the Black Friday deals are still going on. The shopping craze is still out there. Continue.
I was at the mall when they opened. There was no crowd.
Really? Mm-mm. I wonder if it's just because it's that mall. It's so far out.
No, I mean...
Or is it just Austin doesn't care as much?
No, there are times that the mall is very busy. I know what times to go.
Fair enough.
I learned this last year.
Don't go at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, don't. But I was there when they opened. I got in, I got what I wanted, and I got out. One of the stores I went into was this, like, really eclectic collectible type store. You know, they had different signs, Beatles posters, like any kind of cult fandom you can think of, sports team memorabilia. They had those life-size cardboard cutouts of actors and stuff.
Sure.
Anyway, so I know you can't see my shirt from the back, but it says Loki's Army on the back. You know, and I have my hair up, so it's easy to read if you're behind me. So the store owner sees my shirt and he goes, "Oh no, Loki's Army." And I look at him and he goes, "You're just like my daughter. She's in love with Loki. That's her boyfriend." I go, "Mine too." He was like, "Yeah, we got in one of those cardboard cutouts of Loki the other day, and I had to snag it up before I could even put it out for her."
Wow.
I'm like, that's love.
That is love. Yeah. I'm going to cut into my own profits to help my daughter.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait a second. I want a life-size Loki cutout.
So, next time you get one, can you call me, please? Here's my number.
I don't know where I'd put it, but I'd find a place. Yeah. So if any of you fans out there want to get me something for Christmas, life-size Loki cutout. There you go.
Or just a life-size Loki.
Even better.
But let's face it, a really good Tom Hiddleston impersonator would probably do the trick.
Yes, and if Tom Hiddleston happens to be out there watching this, call me.
Yeah. Not me. I'll take Scarlett Johansson any day. Anyway.
So, I just thought that was kind of a funny story. And fitting since we're going to see Thor 2 today.
Yes.
So, I've already seen it, of course. I saw it in 3D the weekend it came out. Dad and you and I are going to go see it. It's you and Dad's first time to see it.
Right.
So, next podcast, we'll finally get to talk about the new Thor movie and the direction that the Marvel Cinema Universe is going. Cool. But for today, we have a lot of other stuff to discuss.
We've got plenty of other stuff to discuss.
Starting with, I want to go ahead and wrap up the Comic-Con stuff.
This was a hoot. So, as you may know, if you've been watching us, this is the first year that I've ever done a Comic-Con. It's the second year you've done one. Mm-hmm. It was much bigger this year than it was last year, apparently. And the Jackalopes got to do their own panel.
It was huge this year.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there.
Speaking from having been there the previous year, it was much, much bigger. And you could tell it was planned to be bigger than last year, but it even exceeded their expectations.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because it exceeded their expectations, there were a few minor snafus along the way from a planning perspective, but these things happen.
But, all things considered, I thought they did well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we get invited back next year, I'll be happy to go and do it again.
Absolutely. First of all, let's discuss the panel. First of all, I want to thank everyone that actually came out. I was pleasantly surprised by the turnout.
Yep.
And have been pleasantly surprised by the number of views the video has gotten. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely call our first panel a success.
I'd say so. It had some... I had some issues up front. We've discussed this. I was not as prepared as I should have been. I tend to wing things, and unfortunately, it bit me in the ass this time. And I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment that I was unprepared to a greater degree than normal. Mm-hmm. So that's on me. But I think that overall,
I did great.
Yeah, Cilla did a fantastic job, and I think that overall the panel went really well. Can't talk today.
Yes, I do think it went well. I was pleased with the turnout. I was very pleased with the audience participation.
Yeah,
we had a great audience.
Yeah.
Some really great
and we
people.
have some new followers from it, so that was pretty awesome.
And continue to get more, I've noticed.
Yeah, and we're getting great feedback from people who have watched the panel, both live and on JoF TV. I think that overall it was a great experience, and it's a learning experience, at least for me, and I think for you a little bit too. To pressure me into preparing a little better next time.
I can't pressure you to prepare any more than I did. I pressured you to prepare. You can't put that.
You did.
Me.
I put it all off. It's entirely my fault that I wasn't prepared. But that is me. That's me. All my life, I've always been a procrastinator, and this time it kind of bit me in the ass. So I pledged that next time, and go ahead and play this back for me when I say that. I pledge that next time we do something like that, I'll be better prepared. Because winging it here, when we do this is easy. Winging it in front of an audience was a little different. And I should not have done that. And I know that now.
And I suspected it would be, which is why I spent 2 weeks preparing, and not just a little here and there. I prepared.
Right, absolutely.
I was prepared.
Hey, but I had a very good point about most writers today being fanfic writers, whether they admit to it or not.
I felt it was a good point. Not everybody agrees with that.
They don't have to.
They had some good... I've heard some good counter arguments to that. So...
That's something we'll discuss some other time.
Yes.
Because I think we're planning on doing another one, just the two of us, about fanfic and kind of expanding on what we were saying.
Yes, because after talking about after panel, and, maybe we'd come up with some of this Has You Prepared more. But we did come up with more stuff that we could have discussed during the panel. Of course, we did have limited time, and for us, time limits are always a little hard to stick to, although we did really good with the panel. So, yeah. But we would definitely like to do a follow-up to the panel, so that'll be something when we have less stuff to cover.
Right.
But, as I've already mentioned several times, November was a very big month in the geek world.
Really was.
Comic-Con being the biggest event for me.
And me. And the Austin geek world in general, Comic-Con was the big day. The big weekend.
Yeah. And I will say this about Comic-Con, and there's more specific points I want to get to, but as a whole, and I found this out last year, and I think it was even more true this year, I always attract a lot of attention at Comic-Con. I have my theories for why this is, which I won't go into, but by the end of Comic-Con, I've gotten to appreciate a little bit of minor celebrity within that group. And it's always so hard to go back to real life on Monday when you're not a celebrity anymore. And suddenly I'm just back to changing diapers. It's hard to come back to reality after being in that world.
You know what amazes me? Speaking of that minor celebrity, and a lot of that's because of the cosplay aspect, the pro cosplayers Those guys do it year round. Mm-hmm. How do they make money? They make a good living.
And I'm researching how to do that.
To me, that's amazing. I think that's very cool that they can pull that off. I think that's very awesome.
I would love to do that.
I don't have the right look for pretty much anything.
Except
maybe Captain Lou Albano.
I got a lot of positive compliments on my Stephanie Brown Robin costume. It came out looking very good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, especially considering it was handmade. It was not a professional costume, or a store-bought costume.
No.
It was a handmade costume, and I think that with practice, they're just going to get better.
So, yeah, my costume came out very good. I got a lot of positive feedback. I had a lot of people wanting pictures with me, which I'm always happy to oblige. But then, even on Sunday, when I thought I was just going in looking like a normal comic book fan, I still attracted attention. You weren't with me on Sunday, so you didn't see any of this, but I was dressed pretty much actually exactly what I have on now, minus the necklace.
Oh, I do see. That's a cute little necklace.
I got a Loki necklace at the con, actually.
With an alien face for some odd reason.
But I had my hair in pigtails, my Loki earrings on, my Loki shirt,
your Loki hoodie.
My hoodie, which wasn't on because that convention floor gets hot.
Yeah, it does get quite warm down there.
So I had it draped over my little messenger bag. So, to me, this is how I went to the mall today. Right. This is my normal appearance.
Right. This is just a day-to-day for you.
Exactly. This is what I wear when I'm not in my work clothes. And I still attracted a lot of attention. And it occurred to me, as all of this is happening, that in the real world, I might just be your normal chick comic geek. In the world of comic geeks, I'm a fashionista.
Okay, fair enough.
So, and if you know me at all, or my upbringing, and you know this very well, right. My mom is always color coordinated, gotta match.
Yes.
And if she's wearing a blue sweater, she's wearing blue pumps, blue earrings, blue jewelry, blue watch, blue eyeshadow.
Yeah, she takes it a little crazy, I think.
And I grew up with this. She got it from my Nana, her mom.
Right.
Same thing. This color coordination thing is a lesson that has been passed down from generation of women in my family.
Sure.
So it's not a mom thing, it's a Nana thing too.
Yeah, it certainly didn't come from Dad.
No. But it got passed down to me, but I'm not into the... I'm very girly, but in a geeky way.
Right.
So my color coordination comes from wearing a Loki shirt with matching Loki earrings. If I have a shirt of a certain character, I have to somehow find matching earrings, matching necklace. I color coordinate but I take it to a geeky level.
Yeah, it's less Sex in the City, more Sex in the Geek.
That was probably a lot funnier in your head.
It was.
So I do this coordinated thing with comic stuff, and apparently, just like if you do this in the business world, real world, whatever, and you look nice, it looks nice within the comic world. Right. I'm just as fashionable of a comic geek as my mom is out in the business world.
Right, absolutely.
I find this to be humorous because when my mom was teaching me about color coordination, I don't think she ever thought I would apply it to comic books.
Yeah, I think she probably would never have expected that.
But I've sort of created my own sort of chic geek fashion.
You're welcome, by the way. I take full credit for your chic geek fashion, and here's why. While your mother may have trained you, and it didn't really develop until you really got into comic books, which I take full credit for.
You can't take full credit.
Whether I can or not, I do.
I was a Kara fan long before I met you.
Right, but I got you into real comic books, and more than just Kara. If it weren't for me, you'd have never found Green Lantern. You'd have never seen these movies.
I strongly disagree.
You'd have never seen these movies. You'd have never seen Green Lantern. You'd have never seen Green Lantern. You'd have never seen Green Lantern. You'd have never seen Green Lantern.
The Marvel movies I'll give you.
Right.
The DC stuff, no. The one thing I will credit you with is letting me know that Kara was back. Because I had written off DC Comics once Crisis happened and Kara was wiped from existence. I sure someday I would have figured it out, but I wouldn't have found out she was back when I did if you hadn't have said, oh, hey, well, that Supergirl's back.
Yeah.
You are the one that told me she was back, which is
so
what...
I got you back into comics.
Yes.
So I can still take credit for it.
You can take credit for that. And you can definitely
Which
take
means
credit...
you never would have done Comic-Con or anything like that.
And you can definitely take credit for my Loki obsession. This fangirl thing is all on you.
Damn it! I take it all back. So anyway, so speaking of Comic-Con still, the costumes... While there were some really good ones and there were some really bad ones.
There were some really bad ones. Some that were so bad, I almost think that they were intentionally bad because they were that bad.
They had to have been. There were some that it looks like they were trying to do something homemade instead of store-bought. And so for them, I give them credit, and they need to work on their skills. But good job on trying. But then you've got some that were homemade that were ridiculous, and it had to be intentional.
It had to be. And my advice, if you're going to do Comic-Con and you're going to cosplay, unless it's like a really good theatrical, expensive costume, stay away from store-bought costumes, because the ones that you get at like the Halloween store are generally not very good.
And laughed at by most of the people at the con.
The only way I think that you can successfully get away with doing a store-bought costume is if you are under the age of 15.
Sure. Oh my God, the two little Batman and Robin princesses.
Oh, they were adorable.
They were adorable. That was hilarious, and I think I've seen them on the internet before. I think they've been to several cons because I've seen pictures of them where, and Mom says they wanted to be, or we wanted them to be princesses. They wanted to be Batman and Robin. This is our compromise, and it worked out great. They're adorable little kids.
And there was a baby Ewok there that I swear was a newborn baby.
Yes.
That baby couldn't have been more than 4 weeks, if that.
Yeah, it was so adorable. The lady was dressed like Leia from Return of the Jedi, so she had the camo and all that when they're down on the moon of Endor, and she had in a little papoose an Ewok strapped to her front. And then I looked closer and I was like, oh my God, that's actually her child. Because you could see the face.
And it was adorable. A newborn.
Yeah.
Like,
couldn't have been more than 2 months old. And probably even younger than that.
Like I said, I'd be surprised if it was more than 4 weeks.
Yeah.
It was a baby.
Yeah.
It was like...
They were doing a good job of keeping him out of the wind, though. So,
yes.
Him or her.
And very adorable baby. Like... I know that babies can't, like, do things on cue, but the way it was, like, moving its little hands and mouth, it almost looked like it was doing it on purpose. It was just so freaking adorable.
And let me tell you, it was cold.
It was cold.
If you did not join us in the Austin City Comic Con, you're okay because it was fucking cold.
It was very... unusually cold this time of year for Austin.
I'm glad they're doing it. Next year it's going to be first weekend of October. Interestingly enough, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yes.
That's a little weird.
It's going to be October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th next year.
Yeah. Again, that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so make your plans now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be much warmer. So we'll probably see skimpier costumes. Yes.
I'm opposed to that, but...
I like the sexy costumes.
It's not because I'm against sexy things. It's because they're not accurate. I'm very big on, if you're going to cosplay, try to be as accurate as possible, which is why my Stephanie costume looks the way it does.
Okay, but here's the thing. There are sexy cosplay that are very accurate, and that's usually based on anime, though.
Or Starfire.
Yeah, or Starfire. Ooh, I haven't seen a good Starfire in years.
No, I saw...
To the cloud. No, I'm kidding.
I did see someone dress up as Starfire at this convention, but it was the Teen Titans anime version.
Oh, I missed that. So much more covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't the New 52 new and sluttier version.
I don't get that. She was slutty enough for me back in the '80s. Marv Wolfman did a great job with her. I don't think she needed to be any sluttier, but I guess the new guys did.
They upped the slut factor for every female in the New 52, and so they had to up it for Starfire too.
I suppose, but whatever.
Speaking of which, that was one thing that I thought was hilarious. There was so much New 52 bashing at the convention.
And Didio in general.
And Didio in general, that I felt like I had found my people. It was amazing, and it wasn't all me starting it.
Yeah, in fact, it typically wasn't you starting it. Somebody else usually said it first.
I may have instigated some of it, but there was plenty of Didio bashing to go around, and I loved it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are still, here we are 2-3 years later, still not happy with the direction of New 52 and Dan Didio in general.
And there's definitely a demand for my Blame Didio parody.
We still need to do that. We need to sit down and record that.
We need to talk about that later. Yeah. It's actually already in the works.
Okay.
I do things on my own too.
That's fine.
But overall, the convention was great. Saturday, he saw the whole panel. I saw most or some of it. We saw William Shatner and Scott Bakula. If anybody from any network or cable station is watching this, you need to sign them to a sitcom pilot because they are hilarious, have great chemistry, and play off each other so beautifully.
I think Dad's, the Fox show with Seth Green and Giovanni Ribisi, I think it would be so much better with Shatner and Bakula. Bakula could be Giovanni Ribisi's dad, and Shatner can be Seth Green's dad, and let the hilarity ensue.
I may actually watch it if that happens.
Yeah.
They need a sitcom, though. They are freaking hilarious. And Shatner's humor, oddly, reminds me a lot of our father.
Yeah. I gotta agree with you there. They're either it's just because they're from the same generation, or Dad's been watching a lot of Shatner over the years. Really could go either way because he's been watching a lot of Shatner over the years.
But there's a lot of Shatner that I was like, I can see Dad saying that.
Yeah, definitely.
But they were great.
Dr. Langley, we got to see his panel.
I actually saw a couple from Dr. Langley. And,
yeah, I only got to see one, but
he's brilliant as always. Do have to give a quick shout out to Dr. Langley. We did actually see him at his booth at the convention, and he was kind enough to autograph my copy of his book, Batman and Psychology: A Dark and Stormy Night, which I was very excited about.
Yeah, I wish I had money. Honestly, if I had some money that I could spend last week, I actually wanted a physical copy of the book signed by Dr. Langley. Yeah. But unfortunately, I can't afford it right now. So
I already had a copy of the book that I brought with me, and he was kind enough to sign it for me.
What I'm thinking about doing is sticking like $60 in a sock somewhere and just not touching it until the next chance we get to see him in person, and then get it from him.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be at the convention next year. And even if he says he's not going, I'm not going to count on that until the last minute, because he said he wasn't going to Austin this year.
Yeah,
and guess
even
what?
when we talked to him at that on our interview, and he wasn't planning on coming, and sure enough, there he was.
And not just one, but 4 panels.
Yeah. So
hopefully he'll be back again next year.
Here's hoping.
Great guy. Love talking to him. And let's see, I saw... I can't say her last name again. Erica Durance.
Lois Lane from Smallville.
Yes. Who I've never really been a fan of until I saw her panel. She is one of the most down-to-earth, sweetest actresses I have ever seen. Very... I don't know if this is even an actual term, but... un-Hollywood, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, perfectly.
Very sweet, very down to earth. She's a geek girl. She appreciates... she grew up watching Star Wars and sci-fi stuff with her brother. She gets it.
Right. She's
not just an actress that happened to get this role in the show and she doesn't really get the fandom. She is part of the fandom. She grew up reading the comic books and idolizing Lois Lane, and just happened to end up playing her. She grew up on a turkey farm in Canada.
A little weird.
So, she actually grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
Which she was able to bring some of that to Smallville, obviously.
Sure, absolutely. She got the down-home, the wholesomeness of the show.
Right.
Especially since they filmed in Canada anyway.
Yeah. So it was very enlightening to see her panel. I definitely am a bigger fan of her than I was going in. I really just went to it because she played Lois Lane, and how often do you get to see Lois Lane live?
Right.
But I'm glad I went because definitely a bigger fan of her now. Also saw Jason David Frank's panel. For those of you that don't know who that is, he played Tommy Oliver on Power Rangers, the original Green Ranger, and then the White Ranger, and then the Red Ranger, and then years later the Black Ranger, and now the Green Ranger again.
Well, that's not done yet.
Well, he played it in Megaforce, if nothing else.
Oh, is that the costume they chose to use for Megaforce? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. I don't.
JDF was pleased with the choice. I don't know if he was looking at it from a continuity standpoint.
Yeah, from a continuity standpoint,
and
it makes no sense.
If I had the chance to talk to him, which I unfortunately did not, I would have asked him about that. And I'm very curious if, because he is so stuck on this Green Ranger thing, I'm very curious if the choice to use the Green Ranger was his call or Saban's.
Oh, I bet it was his. I bet you Saban said, "Hey, we want you to come back." Oh, can I wear the green again? I haven't worn the green in so long. I don't think he ever really liked the white costume. The white, because it was anachronistic. It didn't fit with the other Rangers because it was from a different series. I think it did. He just never really liked it.
He didn't know until recently that the White Ranger in the Sentai footage was a 9-year-old. He mentioned in his panel he just found that out recently. He was like, "What?"
That's funny.
Because evidently, when they first started filming, they watched some of Zoo Ranger, but a lot of the cast would start in on, "Well, they're fighting there. There's blood there. Why can't we do that?" And so Saban was like, "Okay, no more Zoo Ranger for you guys."
Right.
So they weren't allowed to watch the Sentai anymore. Because they're like, "This isn't Japan. This is America. We can't do that."
Yeah, especially not for a kid's show.
No.
So.
No.
That's the thing. Over in Japan, it's not just a kid's show.
No, it's not.
It's for everybody.
It's a family show.
Yeah. Which is crazy to me.
But if you've ever had the opportunity to watch Sentai, which I fortunately have, it's other than the fact that you're seeing the same costumes, it really is a completely different show.
Oh yeah, completely different. The storylines don't match at all.
No, the characters don't match at all. You can't take, for example, Kimberly and look at her Zoo Ranger counterpart's character and compare them in any way, shape, or form. Kimberly is not that character.
Right.
So it is definitely a different show, and if you like if you like anime or any of the Japanese TV shows and haven't seen Sentai, I definitely recommend finding a way to get your hands on some because it's very good. If you don't mind subtitles. I watched all of Hurricaneger. I have all of Hurricaneger, which is the counterpart to the Ninja Storm Power Ranger series. Right. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought Hurricaneger was amazing. As much as I love Ninja Storm, I would actually say I liked Hurricaneger almost as much. It was definitely two completely different series. Like, they're very little in the way of comparison, but both very good in their own right.
Fair enough. So get your hands on some Sentai if you want to check out where it came from.
Yeah, and if you go
Sentai with an S, not an H.
Right.
Big difference.
Very different. Yeah. Confused me at first.
Oh, I believe it. First time you mentioned it, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What's my little sister watching?
Yeah. So, that was Saturday, and then Sunday you weren't there.
Right.
But I went.
I was tired.
And that's when I did my shopping. I bought this Loki necklace. I bought a pair of Loki earrings, not the ones I'm wearing, but a different pair. And then a pair of Supergirl earrings. they're a little more cartoony looking than my Hero Click earrings, so it was kind of so I can get a different look. So yeah, I go to a comic convention and all I buy is jewelry. I am such a girly geek, it's not even funny. I also had my picture taken with JDF, which for me was a great thrill. My 10-year-old self was squeeing all over the place inside my head. And then I actually didn't go to very many panels that day. I really only went on Sunday for 2 reasons. One, to get the photo. Mm-hmm. And 2, because JDF was doing a karate class. Now, I had to put a lot of thought into if I wanted to do this or not, because for those of you that don't know, I have an injured leg. I don't know in what way it's injured because I have not yet been to a doctor, so it has not yet been diagnosed. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's fractured. So it hurts a lot. So I haven't been able to go to the gym or anything. So I haven't worked out in a while because my leg hurts so bad. And then there's this opportunity for a karate class. And if you've never taken karate, which I have, I've taken martial arts, various throughout the years. Most recently, here locally in Austin, I took some at our community college. Right. Which was great, and I do hope to get back into that specific style I took. I just loved, because it's very much a street form of karate, which is great for self-defense. Right. The problem with martial arts is a lot of times it's practical in the studio, but it's not really good for street use. And at this point in my life, I don't care about looking cool. I want to be able to... I live in Austin. I'm a single, young female. I want to be able to defend myself. So I know a little bit about karate. I've taken a couple of semesters of it. And since I was 10, specifically, it's been my dream to train with Jason David Frank. Right. I know that he's not really an actor. I mean, he does Tommy and everything, but he's a martial artist. I've always known that about him. And I've seen some of his karate videos. I know about his karate school. And to actually watch him in action, whether it's on Power Rangers, which is a little bit more Hollywoodized, or just watch him doing straight martial arts, he's amazing.
I think you just made up a new word. Hollywoodized.
Okay. And he really is an amazing martial artist.
Right, he's not an actor. He's a martial artist that happened to fall into a TV role.
Right, and he's brilliant. I would actually venture to say probably one of the best martial artists I've seen, and probably the best on the show. There were some other specific martial artists on the show, but I like Steve Cardenas, who played Rocky.
I was under the impression that Austin St. John was the greatest martial artist ever.
We're going to get to that.
Well,
there is...
We don't have to get to that. We all know the story.
No, we're going to get to that, because I have something to say. But yes, if you ask Austin, he is the greatest. But since we're not asking Austin,
Jason David Frank was giving a class.
Yes. And I really, really wanted to do it because realistically, I'm probably never going to have the opportunity to train under him. This is probably as close as it was ever going to get.
Right.
I realized it wasn't going to be this hardcore martial arts class. It was for families, for children to participate in. I knew most of what he did was probably stuff I already knew, but that wasn't the point.
The point was to do it.
Right. And it was a once-in-a-lifetime
bum leg or
type...
nothing.
Exactly. It was a once-in-a-lifetime type thing. So I did. I heard my mother's voice in my head saying, "Suck it up." And I went and I did it. I did what I could of it. When it turned into some of the jumping stuff, it hurt like hell, but it was so worth it. But my favorite part of the whole thing was, because there were kids doing this too, He turned, after we'd done the basic moves, which as I predicted, I already knew how to do. Was stuff I'd done like on my first day of karate class. He turned it into a game of Sensei Says, which I won. And he was tricky. He kept trying to throw little curveballs. And it came down between me and this other guy, who he finally managed to trick. And so I ended up winning. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, dude, I'm a toddler teacher. If there's one thing I know how to do, it's listen.
Right.
You can't trick a toddler teacher. So I won. I got to shake his hand, which was thrilling for me.
Sure, absolutely.
And finished out the class. By the time I was done with the class, I was ready to go home.
Sure.
My leg hurt like hell. I went back down to the convention floor, picked up my photo, which thankfully was ready to go by that time, and got out of there. I was done. Hurt like hell was a huge mistake, and I would do it all over again.
Well, and I think that's the important thing is it may have sucked, but you don't regret doing it.
No, I would do it again.
As long as you don't have the regret, then you're fine.
Jason David Frank is awesome. You can tell he's very humble, very grateful for his fans.
He bloody well better be.
Very grateful to Power Rangers. And for those of you that have heard the rumor, it's actually true. JDF really is talking to Saban about doing a PG-13 Green Ranger thing. Whether it's a movie that leads off to a series or a series that leads off to a movie remains to be seen, but it is something that he wants to do and something that Saban is finally starting to see the fan base is there for.
Yeah.
So it actually really is in talks.
And this is confirmed by Jason David Frank himself. This is not rumor. He said this live at a panel in Austin.
I heard it out of his own mouth, and I was in the same room when he said it.
So
you don't get much more confirmed than that.
Right.
So it is in talks. Hopefully it pans out, because I think it would be very cool to finally see a more adult version of Power Rangers.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. And we talked about it at work this week, some friends of mine, and specifically talked about how we were talking about Doctor Who and how it's been around so long. And we talked, this other guy goes, well, Power Rangers has been around for 20 years and it's crap. And I said, now wait a minute. Power Rangers has been around for 20 years as a kid's show. If you go back as an adult today and watch the original run of Power Rangers, you're going to roll your eyes. And he goes, no, that's true. And I said, it's not what it used to be, because we're not kids anymore. It didn't grow up with us, whereas Doctor Who did. And I said, but they are talking about the possibility of an adult version, or a more adult version of Power Rangers, with the Green Ranger as the star. And I said, and possibly even be Jason David Frank as Tommy. And he goes, oh, I'd watch that.
Right.
So, the audience is there.
And
it just has to be well done.
And I have to disagree with you a little bit on that. Yes, Power Rangers isn't what it was because we're not kids anymore, but at the same time, even as an adult, there are certain series I enjoy more than others.
Some of them are interesting, but they're still very childish. Like
Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder, I think were well written.
They're probably the best written of the entire run. I'll give you that. Doug Sloan did a good job.
Doug Sloan knew what he was doing, and he's also one of the main forces behind Zeo, which I didn't know at the time, but makes sense that that's one of my other favorite series. I think Doug Sloan has probably done the most with Power Rangers to make it more of an all-around enjoyable show.
Zeo's not one of my favorite. It's certainly darker than previous runs and later runs, but it's certainly better than Turbo. It wouldn't take much.
Well, there are things worse than Turbo though, like Mystic Force.
Mystic Force, yes. I think Mystic Force and Wild Force are the two that I could not watch.
Operation Overdrive was pretty bad too.
I watched a lot of Operation Overdrive though, but like Wild Force, I just couldn't watch.
I liked Wild Force, but not in the same way. I had to accept it as being cheesy.
Which one were they at? They were at the pizza diner the whole time.
Oh, Jungle Fury.
That's Jungle Fury. Okay, yeah. So Wild Force is the one that I couldn't watch. Jungle Fury is funny.
To me, RJ saved that series.
Yeah, RJ really did save that series from being a total failure.
If it hadn't been for RJ, I couldn't have watched it.
Right.
But he saved that.
Jungle Fury, it did have its drawbacks, but it was a fun series to watch. Operation Overdrive, I watched most of. I could not watch the vast majority of Wild Force or Mystic Force. I gave up on both of those.
Both of those were
pretty quick, actually.
I was able to tolerate Wild Force. Did not like Overdrive. Did not like Mystic Force. Never watched all of RPM just because I couldn't get through it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as much as I wanted to watch...
Yeah, I didn't finish RPM either.
As much as I wanted to get through this current series... Or I never watched Samurai either.
Samurai wasn't bad. Samurai and Super Samurai were actually pretty decent, although part of that was because of Bulk. I liked seeing Bulk.
And I tried to keep up with the... Is it Megaforce? Right
Megaforce is current.
I have tried to keep up with that. I think I stuck with it for about 5 or 6 episodes, and I just couldn't do it anymore.
I made it through one season, and that was it. When the new season restarted, I deleted it and I didn't watch the first episode. I said I'm not into it this year. I do want to see the anniversary special.
Yes, I'll watch that as well, but
that'll be on YouTube.
As much as I wanted to stick with the series, I just couldn't do it. The characters and Power Rangers is one of those things that it really is about compelling characters.
Yeah.
Because the show in and of itself is cheesy. It is a kid's show. But if the characters sometimes are compelling enough that they're fun to watch regardless.
Right.
The seasons that are the worst are the ones where I just can't find anything to be interested in within the characters.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Megaforce cast is terrible.
They're a little flat, unfortunately. I mean, the girls are cute, but
the characterization's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's what really did it for both Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder. Those were some really good characters.
Yeah, well-written series. I think it works better with only 3 Rangers, and then you add a couple later. I think just having a smaller team means you can focus on their characters a lot better. I think that was the clue, or the key. That's my belief. At least from an American standpoint. I don't know how the Sentai did it, but from an American standpoint, I think that the ones that were only the 3-person teams that grew a little bit in the series, because like the Ninja Storm added Cam,
and the Thunders.
Yeah, and the Thunder Rangers. But pretty much it was, okay, here's these 3, and here's these 2. So their characters got different. They were focused on differently, and therefore they were built up better.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Dino Thunder. It was just these 3, and then you added Tommy and the White Ranger, whose name Trent. Thank you. So their stories got built up better.
Yeah.
I think. Instead of just having 5 right out of the gate that you got to focus on all of them at once.
Yeah.
To build up all of them. So I just think it worked better starting with 3.
I can see that argument. I also think that Doug Sloan had a lot to do with it.
That's also could be the thing, because he was the head writer for both. So.
Right. Regardless, it has been around a while, and it would be cool to see a more mature version.
Yep. So I really hope that Tommy, I really hope that Jason David Frank and Saban can pull that off.
Me too.
Because I'd like to see Tommy back.
I'd love to see that. What are the highlights of Comic-Con for you? I've been talking about my experience. What was
for yours? Me? It was the just the overall experience. Obviously the panel. The panel was great. I loved doing it. Like I said, yes, there were some failings on my part, I think. But overall, I think we had a great panel. And next time we do one, it's going to be even better. Because we know what we're doing now, or we have a better idea of what we're doing. So we know what to prepare for a little better this time. But aside from that, I think the getting to spend Saturday morning with Dad was really cool. Our father joined us on Saturday morning until about 1, 2 in the afternoon, something like that.
Something like that.
And he had a great time. It was clear that he really enjoyed himself. And that was fun. Just wandering around experiencing geek culture with Dad was very cool. And then, and also spending a lot of that time with you as well. Experiencing that geek culture with my sister. Because while we've done Austin Books, which is very geeky. We love going there together, although we haven't done that in a while. And we love going to Best Buy together and things like that. That's the first major geek function that we've done at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it was a hoot to do that with family. I don't think I would have had as nearly as good a time if I'd just been by myself or even just with friends.
And now you know why I wanted you to go so badly.
Yeah.
So let's hear it. Thank you, Cilla, for convincing me to go to Comic-Con.
I already said that. In fact, there's video evidence of it.
Okay, but let's say it again.
All right. Thank you, Cilla, for convincing me to go to Comic-Con.
You're welcome.
Anyway, I am glad I didn't go Sunday. I know that you went Sunday and you were dead tired. I was even more dead tired because I'm not as young as you are.
It is an exhausting experience, which is why I'm just as happy. It does mean taking 2 days off work instead of one, but I'm just as happy to have it on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday because they'll give me Sunday to recover.
Yeah. Saturday will still be the big day.
Yeah.
And if we get invited to do the panel, it may be a Thursday, Saturday thing for me this time. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. So anyway, and by the way, Wizard World, we'd love to come back.
Absolutely.
Hell, we'll talk about the same thing and just flesh it out some more. Or something different. But, in general, it was a fun weekend had with people that I care about. And for me, that was the best part. The costumes were pretty cool. They had some really great ones. They had some really bad ones. And then they had the in-betweens. They had... and I'll say this. I think the store-bought ones, for the adults, the people who were... older teenagers and into adult that were wearing store-bought costumes looked worse than the ones that were intentionally bad. Because the ones that were intentionally bad, for me anyway, they were doing it, like I said, intentionally. It was supposed to be funny. Whereas the store-bought ones they just weren't trying.
Right.
And that offends me a little bit as a geek. If you're going to do it, make your own costume. Make it your own thing, but make your own. Don't go out there and spend money on a poorly made store-bought.
See, and my biggest issue isn't, although, like I said, if you're over 15, you shouldn't do a store-bought costume at a convention anyway. It's not Halloween, it's a convention.
Right.
But specifically the female store-bought costumes is that they're not accurate at all.
Yeah,
they're such sexed-up versions.
Slut.
They're such sex-up versions of the character that it's ridiculous. And I find it, actually, as a female comic book fan, I find it offensive.
I wish we had a camera running at the time, because we saw two younger ladies. They were probably 18, 19, and just these ridiculously short schoolgirl uniform type skirts that were flared out. So, which means you could see their ass cheeks. And don't get me wrong, they were cute. But I don't really like that look in a girl. I would rather you be a little more covered instead of a slut. But I made the comment to you. I said, "Oh, look, they're dressed as whores."
Well, and there was
that's their comic book character, whore.
And there was another woman that we saw there that was dressed in a Starfleet uniform.
I found out that's intentional. That was Ivy Doomkitty. I didn't even recognize her, but that was Ivy Doomkitty. She's a pro cosplayer, and her Starfleet uniforms are intentionally like that.
Not under Starfleet regulation at all.
But if you go watch the original series, those were some really short skirts, and every now and then you get a little more leg than you meant to. And so that's an intentional thing. But when she's dressed as like Scarlet Witch or even the female Doctor Doom, it looks better. It's not as slutty. Yeah. So that was intentional. I think it's a bad decision, but it's a decision made professionally.
Well, I was sure it was intentional. I never had a doubt it was intentional.
Yeah. But it's also a professional thing for her. She does that work professionally, so there's a reason she does it that way. So I get that. I don't like it, and you didn't like it, but
I find the overly sexualized costumes, with the exception of characters like Star Sapphire, Starfire. They both have Star in their name. I just
And
realized
Fire.
that. Yeah.
Although it's spelled differently.
Right. But with those types of characters, even within the comic books, they're overly sexualized.
Yeah.
Part of that is because they don't need armor.
Right.
Same with the pre-New 52 version of Kara. I never had a problem with her showing her midriff. It's not like she can get stabbed there.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue if they're already sexualized within the books themselves.
Keep it accurate, though.
Right, but if you look at the female Robin costume for sale in stores, it is clearly meant to be a take on Stephanie's costume, but Stephanie would have died quicker than she did if it died. If she had actually worn that costume out on the streets, and she certainly couldn't have grappled her anywhere.
And again, they're appealing to a particular type of costume wearer. So I get that.
No, I agree. But as a female comic book, actual fan of that character, fan of comic characters in general, I find it offensive.
And that's fine. Honestly, and I'm of the opinion of wear what you want, but you're gonna get mocked if you go with a store bought. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. But beyond that, it was just the general atmosphere was very fun, very open, very inviting, which geeks don't always find out in the real world. And so I think it was a very cool experience. And I forget what we were talking about, but I even made the comment to you the first day. You're among friends. It's okay, because you were going to say something, but you decided not to because it was going to be too geeky. Like, no, you're among friends, and there's nothing you can say that's too geeky at a Comic-Con. So
there were people dressed as ponies.
Yep, there were. Thankfully, most of them were female. I think I saw one guy with a My Little Pony backpack, and it was Rainbow Dash, whatever. It was kind of like Rainbow Dash holding on to him like this, kind of.
Yeah.
So legs around his shoulders and back legs around his mid section here.
He's giving Rainbow Dash a piggyback, right?
Yeah, that's there we go. And so at least it wasn't a sexualized version of My Little Pony.
But
So,
I realize...
bronies beware. Don't sexualize that crap.
I realize that comic conventions cover more than comics,
Sure.
but I really wish the bronies would go to their own convention.
Saw a lot of Doctor Who cosplay there, which
but
is not surprising because of the weekend. Because, of course, it was the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who on the same weekend.
Same day. There was actually while the rest of the world was watching Doctor Who on BBC America, whatever your country's channel is, Comic-Con was also simulcasting it in one of the ballrooms.
In the big ballroom.
At the convention. So at Comic-Con we got it too. We chose not to be part of the screening because it was a little too much.
Yeah, it was going to be too crowded, and I've heard this a lot from the reviewers. There was a lot of points where you couldn't hear what was happening because the crowd was too loud. For example, okay, real quick, spoilers. The scene at the end where the curator walks out, everybody just went nuts. And you couldn't hear his first, 3 lines. So some of the explanation of what was going on is lost.
Right.
So you have to watch it again to understand what the hell's going on.
But switching over into Doctor Who, and if you haven't seen the 50th anniversary
stop watching
yet,
now.
Turn this off because this is now a spoiler zone. Nothing. We've both seen it, so nothing's off limits at this point.
Right.
So you have 3, 2, 1. Spoilers.
Right. So 50 years of Doctor Who. We finally got to 50. We got to see the 50th anniversary, which you and I have been just salivating for all year long.
And I was disappointed.
I knew you would be. I knew that in general you were going to be disappointed. So
it had some good points. I love that they used the original opening theme.
Yes, and not just the original opening theme. That whole shot with the Bobby walking by I Am Foreman's garage. I mean, everything was almost. It was it wasn't shot for shot correct, but it was very clearly supposed to give you the feel of that original broadcast 50 years ago.
Yes, I loved that whole throwback thing.
Yeah, that was a beautiful moment. I love that Ian Chesterton is on the board of governors. Ian being the first male companion of the Doctor back in 1963. I love that Clara was teaching at Coal Hill. This episode was, for the most part, a fan service episode.
Yes.
And the anniversary specials almost always are. The multiple Doctor stories are usually fan service. They're not to be taken super seriously.
Except for the fact that you kind of have to, because this changes everything.
It does and it doesn't. And of course, we're going to talk about that. But so in general, let's talk about impressions overall first. Then we'll get into specifics.
Okay. Well, first of all, there was a short special leading into this.
Right.
There was The Night of the Doctor, which was the first adventure we've seen of the 8th Doctor in like 17 years.
Yeah, it was woefully short. I wish it had been a full episode.
There is a petition online now that's gathering thousands upon thousands upon thousands of signatures to give the 8th Doctor his own series.
And unfortunately, it's already been shot down. At the very least by Stephen Moffat. Stephen Moffat has said there's just no way. Maybe in the future as a special, a one-off, but there's no way that he can concentrate on 2 Doctor Who series and Sherlock.
Moffat doesn't have to be involved. The BBC just has to go.
But that's the other thing. The BBC has a very limited budget because they are a publicly funded broadcasting company. They have a limited budget as to what they can throw at each show, and their Doctor Who budget is going to be focused on the future, which is Peter Capaldi, not going back and saying, okay, here's what happened with the 8th.
Yeah.
So the odds of it happening are very slim.
But there is a lot of interest.
There is a lot of interest, a lot of fan interest involved in seeing Paul McGann come back and do the 8th Doctor and show some of the stuff we missed.
Right. Even if they did a couple of more movies, I think that would be satisfactory. Yeah. They don't have to do a whole series. Do a couple more movies.
I wouldn't mind taking a break from, depending on how 2014 goes, with Peter Capaldi's first run, I wouldn't mind taking a break for a year, doing like David Tennant's last year was, and doing just a couple of specials with just Paul McGann. I think that would be cool. Like 4 specials, and then come back to Capaldi. But
what we did get to see in this mini episode was finally the 8th Doctor's regeneration.
Yes, we finally
something
got to see what happened.
Has been the source of speculation among Whovians for years, and we finally got to see. And he didn't regenerate into Eccleston.
No,
he regenerated into John Hurt,
right,
the War Doctor.
Yes, he regenerated into John Hurt, the War Doctor. So it also ended that speculation as to where John Hurt falls in the timeline. He's not a future Doctor. He is, in fact, the 9th incarnation of that soul. But not the 9th Doctor. Yeah, Moffat's an idiot.
He is an idiot. I agree with that, but we'll get to that.
So it also showed the return of the Sisters of Karn, which I thought was great. As a fan of the classic series, I loved the Sisters of Karn being involved in that regeneration. I also love the couple of throwaways they did. You know, you can come back as whatever you want, including a woman. They actually mentioned that. So which sets up the concept of there being a female Doctor down the road. Women, other females out there, feminists, you can hate on me all you want. I never want to see a female Doctor. I think he should be a male. Oh, I don't know. I think it depends on the... I think it largely depends on who gets cast. Because let's face it, if Dame Judi Dench, I said her name wrong, gets invited to play the Doctor, then I'm all for it. Because she's a brilliant actress. And I think that she could do a hell of a job as the Doctor. In fact, she almost was. She almost was the 9th Doctor instead of Christopher Eccleston. So I think and let's face it, she'd have been a better choice because she wouldn't have given up after a year, and she certainly wouldn't be flubbing her nose at the coming back for the 50th and all the fan. I have so many issues with Christopher Eccleston because of all that. I have a lot of disrespect for him right now. Absolutely. As a fan of Doctor Who, and I put him in the same boat as Tom Baker 30 years ago. Tom Baker 30 years ago got kind of pissy and refused to do the 20th anniversary. At first he was going to, then he said, no, I'm not going to do it. He backed out at the last minute. And it pissed a lot of fans off. And now here we are 30 years later, and Tom realizes how dumb it was. Mm-hmm. He goes, I made a terrible mistake. So I put Christopher in that realm. In 10 years, he may realize just how big of a mistake it was.
And at the same time, he may not. But what I want to know is why he agreed to play the Doctor in the first place. Because by the time he took the reins, mm-hmm. it wasn't the worldwide phenomenon that it's become, but it certainly was British pop culture. And by that point, you certainly knew the Whovians existed.
Honestly, he was not a fan of the show. He had never watched it growing up. He was one of those rare Brits that didn't watch a lot of it growing up. He wasn't a fan. He didn't know a lot about it. He knew, when it was presented to him, it was presented as, we're going to do this show. We're bringing back Doctor Who. We're only going to do a year. We're not expecting to continue past a year. And that's exactly the way it was presented. We're not expecting to go past a year. So when he was signed, he was only signed for a year. And then after Rose aired and they said, okay, we're going to keep going, and would you like to come back? He had already made other plans. He was committed to other things, and he couldn't continue.
Which is all well and good, but don't turn your nose up at it.
Here's what happened. So when news of his non-return came out, fans lashed out against him. The Doctor Who fandom has treated him like shit for the last 8-9 years, whatever it's been now. So I completely understand his desire to just put it away, because the fans have been really, really mean to him. So I get that. But on the other hand, you've been offered a chance to mend that fence.
Redeem yourself.
Yeah, and so why not take it? Why not go, you know what, I'd love to.
Or at the very least, it shows that you accept that you're a part of this family, for lack of a better term.
Right. I think that's a great term. I think family is exactly the way to put it. All the previous doctors, all the companions, they love what they did. Mm-hmm. Even Tom has come back around, and although it's been 20 years now, or 15 probably, since he has made his miraculous comeback. He's doing Big Finish for the last 10 years has really gotten him back into the spirit of things. So Tom loves the show and loves the experiences he had.
Right.
He wasn't real happy with John Nathan Turner, which is probably a lot of the reason that he didn't want to do the 20th. When he left under very poor terms, and so trying to get him back just a couple of years later for the 20th, I'm not surprised that there were issues.
But going back to this special, we didn't see Christopher Eccleston.
Technically, you saw him twice.
Yes, we did see him. We didn't see new footage of him.
They cheated a wee bit.
He didn't appear except in archive footage.
Right. He did not he did not record a new appearance. They stole a little bit of footage, and now for my next trick, and then the regeneration at the end. You clearly see that he's turning into Eccleston. Yeah. Although I wish the ears had popped out a bit,
which was I
think that'd have been funny.
Very easily done with CGI.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so the leading up to it, we did see the 8th Doctor regenerate into the War Doctor.
Right.
And then,
did you notice how young they made John Hurt look in that reflection? If you go back and watch that scene, mm-hmm. John Hurt was when he looks at his reflection at the very, very end, right after the regeneration, he's a very young John Hurt in that reflection. So I think that's rather brilliant, because it shows how long he was in that body before the events of the Day of the Doctor.
Right. So then we go into the Day of the Doctor. We see doesn't pick up from where the last episode left off. When we last left the 11th Doctor and Clara, they were in that alternate reality, or
they were in
that weird dimension where they first see the war doctor.
Right.
We open up this episode.
It's like 6 months later or a year later or something like that.
Right. She's teaching and then goes off to meet up with the doctor.
Right. Yeah, and actually, so if you really think about it, it's years later because she's had time to go and get her teaching certificate. And I know that it's not any easier to get it over there than it is over here. So she's had years of college and all that, although we don't know how much college she may have had before she met the doctor. She was not yet a techer.
Right, she was a nanny.
Yeah, so she has become a teacher at Coal Hill School, secondary school. So it implies that it's many months down the road, if not years.
Right. Unless she had a teaching certificate already
and was just wasting it on a nanny position?
Well, for all we know, she was looking for a teaching position and hadn't yet acquired one.
That's true.
I mean, there's a lot of up in the air there, but there was definitely some time passed. Right. How much time has passed, we don't know.
Yeah, it does not specify how much time has passed. The only thing it makes clear is that this is supposed to be somewhat present day.
And later down the line from the last episode.
Right.
So she meets up with the doctor. They're basically summoned to unit.
Summoned my ass. They're picked up by a helicopter and flown.
Okay, so they're taken to unit.
They're unceremoniously dumped in front of unit.
Yes.
Trafalgar Square.
Unit's not exactly tactful when it comes to the doctor, I've noticed.
I'm going to say that that's probably the dumbest scene in the whole episode. Why would Unit have picked up the TARDIS? If he's not in it, how would he have known to go looking for it? He would have gone back to that spot going, where the fuck is my TARDIS?
He always eventually finds the TARDIS.
I know, but
he'd eventually ended up at Unit.
Right, but that's it. It's a very strange way of doing things. And why not go up and say, Doctor, are you in there? Yes, could you please come to Trafalgar Square? All right, see you in a moment. Or fucking call him. She's got his phone number. Because it shows him calling in. It's his ringtone, so clearly she knows the phone number to the TARDIS. Fucking call him. It's the dumbest scene I think I've ever seen since Moffat's taking over the.
Like
the
I
run.
said, Unit is not tactful when it comes to the doctor.
Also, a lot of meta stuff going on in that whole thing. The ringtone being the sound that the TARDIS makes. So when he calls Kate Stewart, who is the daughter of Brigadier Gordon Lethbridge Stewart,
which I thought was kind of cool.
I think that's amazing. It's the second time we've actually seen her. But when he calls her, the ringtone on her phone is the sound that the TARDIS makes when it's landing. It's the engines, or if you believe River, it's him leaving the brake on. We have decided that's a joke. She's kidding. She knows something about how to drive the TARDIS, but it's not because of the brake. Because all TARDISes throughout all time have always made that noise. The Master's TARDIS, the Monk's TARDIS, they all make the same noise. So it's not the brakes. Unless they all drive like the Doctor. They're all terrible at driving their TARDISes. So anyway.
Wait a minute. The Master has a TARDIS?
In the original run, yeah.
I did not know the Master had a TARDIS.
All Time Lords, pretty much.
I thought the Doctor stole this TARDIS.
Yeah, then all the rogue Time Lords stole theirs. The Master's got his own, which looks surprisingly like the Doctor's inside. It's just lit differently.
I assume it's not a police box, though.
No, his has a working chameleon circuit. So does the Monk's. But
I don't think the Doctor wants a working chameleon circuit at this point.
No, he's actually said that he gave up trying to fix it because he rather likes the look of the police box. So, which has changed over the years. So the chameleon circuit is still working to an extent. The TARDIS is able to change its form. It just chooses not to. I think that's what it is. I don't think the chameleon circuit's broken at all. I think she's just being flighty.
Or maybe it's just a little glitchy and it can only alter the police box image.
I think she just happens to like the way she looks in blue.
Could be. So
anyway. Trafalgar Square. And then we get taken into the National Gallery, where he's given a letter from QE1, Good Queen Bess, the Virgin Queen, and he doesn't open it right away, but he goes in to see her credentials, which is a painting of the day that Arcadia fell. And it's a 3D painting, and that was a cool effect. Even not watching it in 3D, the effect of the camera panning and you can see stuff off the edges, I think that was pretty cool.
Imagine how cool it would have looked in a theater, though.
It would have looked pretty cool in 3D, but I'm okay with not having seen it.
It did very well in the theaters, though.
I heard it's and
number 2 in America, number 3 in Britain.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
No, especially for one airing.
Yeah, exactly. And then so at that point, there's a bit of a flashback scene, and we see John Hurt doing his thing, doing the no more, being a badass, running over some Daleks. I think that was hilarious, him running over the Daleks. I mean, some of the story, to me, it felt like two different stories.
Yeah.
Because you had the issue with the Zygons, and the issue of the Time War. And
the Zygon storyline just sort of got left. It never really got resolved.
It never gets resolved. The last time we see the Zygons, and of course this is only the second time we've ever seen the Zygons anyway, in the show. They've been in the other media, but in the show. And they just kind of get left off. No one knows who's a Zygon except the nerd girls know. No one knows who's real and who's a Zygon, and they're trying to figure out a compromise that we don't know what the end result is. Mm-mm. So it's possible that we'll see fallout from that later, but if knowing Stephen Moffat, it'll just never happen. That'll be it.
Yeah. So that we don't have to go...
I'd rather see the Daleks.
Right. And so that we don't have to go through every scene of the show, we basically end up seeing the 10th Doctor with Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, it finally explains how he got married to Queen Elizabeth. It's completely a mistake.
Yeah, completely. It was the 10th Doctor trying to be all-knowing and failing again.
Right. And... So it explains, number one, the throwaway statement of him getting married to Queen Elizabeth that he said at the end of time. And it explains why she's so pissed at him at the end of the Shakespeare Code. Because it's like 10 years later from the moment that they got married. So he gets married and leaves Queen Elizabeth I. He never returned to her. So here she is, married with no husband.
Right.
And so I imagine that after 10 years, she'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah. So it tied that stuff up nicely.
Finally. Tying up some of RTD's leavings.
I love that the Fez was the connecting factor.
I do love that. Just once. One of these days, we're going to walk past the Fez without you putting it on. Never going to happen.
And then we see the 10th and 11th Doctors meet for the first time, which I thought was a very cool scene. Yeah,
very, very funny, cheeky, and cool scene. And then, of course, the War Doctor shows up. And
not so funny.
Well, actually, I thought that was quite hilarious. It's him being the grumpy old granddad.
Yeah.
And to these two punks who are trying to be him, basically. Really? Y'all, like the whole Alonzi and Geronimo? Really? I thought the interplay of the three was brilliant.
It really was.
I loved the moment. So part of the War Doctor's big plan is he steals this Time Lord weapon that is so dangerous that they've locked it away. And it's the only weapon in their restricted area that they haven't touched. And he goes in and steals the motherfucker. He goes in, takes this box, this rather steampunkish looking box, and goes out into the wastelands of Gallifrey and tries to figure out how to access it, and it helps him along by showing up. The interface has a conscience, so it shows up in the form of not just Rose, played by Billy Popper, of course, but not just Rose, but the Bad Wolf version of Rose. Which
I thought was cool. I would have also liked to seen Rose and the 10th Doctor interact again. So
I'm glad they didn't.
I was a little disappointed in that. I was kind of hoping that the timeline that they would have taken the 10th Doctor from would have been during one of his adventures with Rose.
Right, and the line at the end of they do make a point of saying that the War Doctor and the 10th Doctor are not going to remember anything.
Right.
And that's why Eccleston and Tennant and Matt Smith, up until this moment, don't remember the events.
Right.
Because timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, big ball of stuff. But I loved the fact that it wasn't really Rose. That it was a complete surprise. That, yes, we knew Billy was coming, and we assumed it was Rose, but it wasn't really Rose. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was well-written. And it's probably Billy Piper's best portrayal on Doctor Who. Because it's that slightly schizo... wait, who am I? Am I from your future or your past? I always get that mixed up. I like that. I think that it was I think it was brilliantly done. And it's probably the best thing the best single thing of the whole episode was her performance.
She did do very well. I will give Billie Piper props. She played the role brilliantly. I thought it was a creative way of using her in the episode. Still a little disappointed I didn't get to see her and Tennant work together. Although I did like when the 10th Doctor heard Bad Wolf, you could see the look on his face.
Exactly. Bad Wolf Girl, I could kiss you. Oh yeah, that's gonna happen. She actually says, "Oh yeah, that's gonna happen." And then Ten goes, "Wait, did you say Bad Wolf? You know, who'd you say?" And so that realization that, my God, Rose was here.
And just by the look on his face, at least to me, and I know I'm a fangirl when it comes to Ten and Rose, but from my perspective, just the look on his face, you could clearly see that love for Rose was still there.
Absolutely.
He knows she's gone, but I think he'll always love her.
Yeah. I'm also glad that they didn't pull Rose out of Never Neverland, the alternate continuity, because I don't want to know what's happened with her and the clone. I want to just assume that they lived happily ever after. I just want to let it go at that. I don't need confirmation, and I certainly don't want to see it if somebody decides, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
She does deserve a happy ending after everything she went through.
Absolutely. So, of course, all this led up to... we're not really talking much about the Zygons because they were such an ineffectual nothing to this episode. They didn't mean anything.
It was a very poor subplot, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really was. All it did, in fact, the only thing it really did was set up the way that they would resolve the big problem, which was the Time War.
Right.
And how to get into the command center.
Right. Which we do see them resolve the Time War, and it's not by the Doctor blowing up the Time Lords, although he does still blow up the Daleks.
Right. The Doctor, although the way it's done, because of the memory loss, he still believes that he destroyed everybody. But they ended up saving Gallifrey. Now, here's the cool part. There's two things that I thought of this week. So there's a mention that the High Council is off making its own plans. Those plans are what we see in the End of Time. Okay? So we see Rassilon come forward, try to bring Gallifrey out of that point in the Time War, which, by the way, is right before the Doctor saved everybody. So when Ten stopped them, or sort of stopped them, the Master jumped into the vortex, which means he got sucked back with Rassilon and all the other Time Lords to that moment in history, in the Time War. So when Gallifrey gets saved, the Master is alive on Gallifrey.
He is.
With Rassilon and the High Council and everything. They're saved in that moment. Probably doing this. You know? So, when, I'm just going to say when, not if, when the Doctor, whether it's in the Christmas episode or during Peter Capaldi's run, finally does locate where Gallifrey is and restores it, the Master's going to come back. Not just all these other Time Lords, which opens up for the return of Romana, the Monk, the Time Lords in general, a new version of Rassilon possibly, but the Master. We could see the Master come back with a really good reason why. I love that. I think that's very cool.
Yep.
The other thing that I noticed has escaped me. Crap! I should have written that down. What was it? I don't know. Go ahead.
This is what we call lack of preparation.
No. I just thought of them like yesterday. It just occurred to me.
Anyway, so we see all 13 doctors.
All 13. We see a version of all 13, including Peter Capaldi's eyes.
Which
I thought that was pretty
I caught. Then it was quick. It was a blink and you miss it moment. And
yeah, and it's his voice too. He says something, he pulls a lever, and then boom, eyes. Like, ooh, that's Capaldi.
Yes, and I did catch it, and I will admit that little snippet kind of made me have a fangirl moment. Yeah, I thought it was very cool.
And I think he's going to be a brilliant doctor.
Oh,
I really do think Peter Capaldi's going to do a great job.
Obviously, I'm going to withhold my overall opinion because it remains to be seen, but I think that he's got a ton of potential.
I'm more excited about him than I ever was Matt Smith.
Oh, absolutely. No offense against Matt Smith because he definitely had a tough act to follow in following Tennant.
And he's done a great job with what he's been given. Right.
But definitely not one of my favorite doctors. Obviously, Tennant's my favorite. I would then venture to guess, if I had to pick a second favorite, it'd be Paul McGann. I actually just rewatched the movie last night, and the special.
He does a great job.
And despite his minimal appearance as the Doctor, I very much like him as the Doctor.
Right.
So I would definitely say those are my two favorites. I can definitely see the new Doctor becoming my second favorite. He's got potential.
A lot of that's going to depend on writing, though. As we've seen, Moffat doesn't have the most consistent writing abilities.
No, I don't like his writing overall, but you know,
Moffat, when he writes comedy, it's good. When he writes spooky, it's good. It's when he does the just straight drama that it falls flat. I think that's his biggest problem, and that's why this episode seemed to fall flat a bit. It wasn't scary, and it wasn't truly funny. It was more drama, and that's not his strong suit.
No, it's not. But I don't think the writing, obviously if it's brilliant writing, that's great. But I've also always been able to say, okay, this actor was great in the role. It was just poor writing. Like Supergirl.
Yeah.
I can say without a doubt Helen Slater made a brilliant Kara. The writing sucked.
The writing sucked.
So
absolutely.
I think even if Moffat's writing continues to be stale, I'll be able to say he was a brilliant doctor. He just wasn't given good material. So I don't think that the writing is going to affect what I think of this doctor overall. Obviously, good writing is always a good thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be my deciding factor on if I like this doctor overall or not.
Fair enough.
But I did like the fact that they even, obviously it was a sound alike because the first doctor's not alive anymore, but that they did record new audio for the first doctor.
Right, and it was a good sound alike. He did a good job.
Yes, it was very good. So obviously archive footage, but we see a glimpse of all 13 doctors.
Yep, absolutely.
And ultimately they save Gallifrey. It's in a pocket universe that all looks destroy each other. The War Doctor goes off in his TARDIS, and I assume just from old age regenerates.
That's my thing. I guess he even mentions the wearing a bit thin.
Yeah.
Because that harkens back to the first Doctor when he regenerated. The line says, the body's wearing a bit thin, and then he collapses and regenerates into the second Doctor. So I think that's exactly what it was. It was a harkening back to that, and this is just an old age regeneration. This Doctor has seen a lot, and it finally caught up with him.
So we see the War Doctor regenerate into the Ninth Doctor. Not a clear regeneration, obviously, because we didn't have Eccleston in the episode, but As clear as they could reasonably do.
You start to see features that are clearly Chris Eccleston, and then it cuts away.
Right. Then we see the 10th Doctor leave. Before he leaves, the 11th Doctor says where they're ultimately headed, and just like in the end of time, right before he regenerates, the 10th Doctor says,
go.
I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Nice little throwback there.
Again, a fan service thing.
And then we see him get in his TARDIS and go, obviously not to remember this adventure. As we clearly see when the 11th Doctor...
I remembered what the other thing was. I'll come back to it.
Hold it.
Yeah.
Do not lose it.
Here, I'll make a note for myself.
Anyway, as we saw when 11 and 10 meet up, 11 comments on, or rather 10 comments to 11, how can you not remember this? So it's very clear that there is no recollection of the event, which is how they get around the whole changing history thing.
Right. Technically, they didn't. They didn't technically change history. They just don't remember what they actually did.
Yeah.
That's why it's not a paradox.
And then right at the end, we see the
ultimate fan service for the classic era fans. We get the curator. And it's a very funny setup, is because Matt says, I could be a curator. I could retire, settle down, be a curator of some museum. And then you hear this voice, this magical voice, come in from behind the camera saying, perhaps one day you will, or something like that. And I immediately went, oh my God, that's Tom. And sure enough, there's Tom Baker in all his glory. And yes, he's gotten old. He's 90-something years old, but man, it was cool. It was very cool to see Tom
obviously
again.
Not playing the Doctor, but he was in nevertheless.
That is an argument that has been bumped around all week. Who was he? Obviously, he's called the curator, but he's never given a proper name. But context based on the conversation, it's easy to see that it's intentionally ambiguous. But one way to look at it is that, and this is based on actual lines from the show, is that the Doctor will eventually revisit some of his old favorite faces, which means they're already saying, yes, you're going to go beyond 13 lives. And perhaps one day you will settle down and become a curator. Because 11 says, I know that face. And the curator says, you'll end up revisiting some of the old favorites eventually. And maybe one day you will settle down and become just a curator. So I think it would be very cool. Or I think it's a very cool scene because it opens up the suggestion that as time goes by, he'll get better control over his regenerations, and he'll go back to some of his favorite faces, including 4. So it's not the 4th Doctor. It is not the 4th incarnation of the Doctor.
Could be the 15th or 16th Doctor, though.
Exactly. It could be 28th or whatever. It's another version of the Doctor down the road is one interpretation.
Which makes sense to me.
Yeah. Another interpretation that I've heard, and I rather like actually, is that this is somebody that he's actually run into before in an earlier, probably during the 3rd Doctor's run, he ran into that man as a younger man. And it influenced, when he regenerated, his subconscious, it influenced the regeneration into that face. Much like Romana did when Lala Ward was in the Key to Time run. She was one of the last characters in the Key to Time. And then when Romana 1 had to leave because she was pregnant, Romana 2 comes along and it's the same actress. The impression is that she based it on the appearance of the princess. The 6th Doctor was a captain of the guard during Tom Baker's run. It may have been Peter Davison's run, but anyway. But one of the times they went to Gallifrey, he was there. And then the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, Matt Smith has seen him. The 11th Doctor saw him in the early days of Amy's travels with him.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. It was 10. It was David. It was 10 because it was an episode that Karen Gillan is in, but it was before she was Amy. She was one of the seer people. It was 10 and Donna. It was during their run that he appeared, and so now that's influenced a regeneration. So it's possible that the real live individual that will become the curator, they ran into him in a previous incarnation, and it influenced the face later.
Right.
So I think that's an interesting way to look at it. I sincerely hope that Moffat never explains it. I don't want anybody to ever explain it. It's another one of those things. I'm happy just making speculation. It was done for the fans so that they would make speculation, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And much like the appearance of the mother in The End of Time, you see the two people behind Rassilon covering their faces, and one of them looks up, the female looks up. That's supposed to be the Doctor's mother. And while it's never said that way, it was filmed as speculation. But RTD always said, yeah, I wanted that to be his mother. But it was filmed so that the fans could speculate. But he screwed everything up by announcing, oh, it's his mother. Well, RTD kind of screwed that up. But I hope that it's never explained. I hope that it's left intentionally ambiguous. It's a great scene.
So that was the 50th. It fell a little flat for me, like you said. Moffat's not great at drama, and that's probably where it fell flat.
And these fan service episodes, the 50th, the 20th, the 10th, none of them have been spectacular episodes because they're just
but this had the
fan service.
But this had the potential to be spectacular.
It should have been. We wish it could have been, but it just did. Yeah, it definitely missed the mark. The docudrama Adventure in Space and Time, which was documenting the creation of the show, I think was a better homage in the 50th anniversary than...
Actually, need to watch that. It's on my DVR.
Oh, it's so brilliant. It is very good.
Now, we're going to wrap it up soon, I promise. But before we do, let's talk numbers.
Let's talk numbers.
So
my favorite number is 13.
There is no question Doctors 1 through 8.
Right.
Those are set. But then we have the War Doctor. And Moffat and the fans, and I say fans as a generalized term, don't seem to agree on this. And I'm one of those fans that I kind of understand Moffat's logic, but the show itself contradicts what he's trying to say. He's basically trying to say that the War Doctor is not the Ninth Doctor because he did not consider himself to be the Doctor.
Right. He never took the name of the Doctor.
Except that he did.
At the very, 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 very end of his regeneration, he finally says, I suppose I can become the Doctor again. And then he regenerates. Like 2 minutes later. So so for that reason, when he decides to become the Doctor again, it's at the end of his regeneration and he becomes the Ninth Doctor. So what Moffat is basically saying is 1 through 8, War Doctor, 9 through 12.
Right.
There are 13 lives, 13 incarnations of the soul, 12 Doctors, 1 War Doctor.
Right.
That's what he's saying.
And he is saying that even though this new Doctor is called the 12th Doctor, it is his 13th incarnation. He's about to find himself in trouble.
Right. This is the last one as far as he knows. But
obviously, we've always known that there was going to be a loophole. The Master always found a loophole, so there was never really a question that the Doctor eventually would. Although he won't go to the same lengths. I was
going to say, the Master
did.
cheated a lot. I mean, he had to take over the body of another person, and then that body was granted the extra regenerations or that's the assumption anyway, when the Time War started and the Master was resurrected. That stolen body is the one that was granted the 13 regeneration or 13 lives, 12 regenerations.
That would be the Eric Roberts version.
That would be the Eric Roberts version, yeah. Basically, because he stole Tremus's body and became the Master. And then he stole Eric Roberts' body. And so when he fell into the Eye of Harmony in the movie, that's where he was pulled from and given those regenerations. So that human body was turned into a Time Lord, essentially.
Right.
They do have some options available to him. Technically, because of the way DNA works, the 10th Doctor was made into a human and then made back into a Time Lord. So technically you could count that as the first one and just go. So you got 1, 2, 3 now.
So that's a loophole. There's also the possibility that there's... and I think it's going to connect to this whole graveyard thing that they got going.
Oh, yeah, eventually. My biggest problem with the whole thing anyway is technically... Okay, so if you accept that the War Doctor, John Hurt's character, is the 9th incarnation, which we kind of have to at this point.
Right.
That means Eccleston was the 10th.
And I still say we should be calling him the 9th Doctor. I realize this is not the way Moffat is having it officially, but to me, he's the 9th Doctor. He should be.
But the reason, and I get the reason he's not wanting to do that is because it does cause confusion among the fans.
Right.
But anyway, so using Moffat's numbering, we have 8 War Doctor, 9, 10. So David is the 10th Doctor. He's the 11th version of that soul, right? Okay. When at the end of his run, or towards the end of his run, the end of Donna's season, he splits. He goes through a regeneration and diverts that energy into that hand and grows the clone.
Yes.
That is a regeneration. He's 2 regenerations in one body. He wasted his regeneration energy. It's gone.
Yeah.
So that's a life.
I thought he stopped the regeneration.
By diverting it over there, he stopped it from happening to him, but the energy was still expended. So, in my opinion, then this is me, and I'm not the only one who feels this way, Matt Smith should have been considered the 13th version. David is both 10 and 11, which means he's the 11th and 12th versions, and Matt Smith is the 13th version.
They're obviously not counting that as a regeneration.
Yeah, they're not counting that as a regeneration, and they should be. So, Peter Capaldi is already outside of that number. Unless during the Christmas episode they go, no, remember this? Yeah, see, you're out of lives. Just because you didn't change faces doesn't mean you didn't use up a life.
And if they and it is possible they go that route, and the Christmas episode is a way of him figuring out how to regenerate again.
Right.
That's a possibility we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know anything about the Christmas episode. We're intentionally avoiding spoilers.
You're intentionally avoiding spoilers. I went looking for spoilers, and there's none to be had.
They're being very, very secretive. There is a trailer out there and a poster and all that, but I haven't even looked at those.
Oh, then I won't say what I was going to say.
I that's how fanatic I'm being about avoiding spoilers, because even the trailers have been giving too much away.
The only thing
I didn't know that the Zygons were going to be there. A lot of people did. I didn't know that Tom Baker was going to be in it. Tom Baker was a surprise for a lot of people, but a lot of people he wasn't, because Tom Baker blabbed like a week ahead of time. He says, "I'm 93 years old. I'll say what I bloody well want to," and he went out and started saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be in the 50th." He ruined it for a lot of people. And pissed off the producers.
But even the trailer that we've seen so far for the Christmas, aside from knowing what villains we're dealing with,
which I don't even know that.
It didn't cover much. And so I won't say what villains we're dealing with, so I won't spoil that for you.
Thank you.
I will say the villains we're dealing with, I'm excited to see all together in one episode.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's fine. You can say that much.
I'll say that much.
Nothing more.
That excited me. That's also all I know about it is what villains we're dealing with.
and you may not even know everything about that, obviously.
Right.
Just what they've shown us.
Exactly.
So
other than knowing there will be a regeneration by the end of the episode, and probably at the end of the episode.
I imagine it's the final scene.
Right. That's it. That's all we know. I looked. I tried.
On the plus side, it's 26 days away. Mm-hmm. You know, we are...
It's not like waiting for the 50th.
Yeah, it's so much closer, and so I'm glad about that. It's the one regret at Comic-Con I have. I wish I'd bought that damn scarf. I'm kicking myself. I'm glad I didn't buy the hat because the hat's wrong.
Yeah.
The hat's too stiff. It needs to be floppier. But I want that scarf. Oh well. Anyway.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'll get up off my ass and get a real job and be able to pay for my own toys again. The Christmas episode's coming up. All we know so far, you know who the villains are, but all I know so far is it will be a regeneration episode. And
it does appear, and I haven't heard anything contrary to this, that we're keeping Clara for another series.
Yes, Clara is confirmed for Peter Capaldi's first series.
Which I'm excited about because this is we've had some decent companions, but since Rose, this is my favorite companion.
I do love Clara. She's a little firecracker, and I love her. We've also been confirmed that in 2014, which means the upcoming year, we will get all 13 episodes.
Very cool.
They are not going to split it across 2 years like they did Series 7.
Okay.
So that's cool. And the assumption that I'm making is that means 13 episodes and then a Christmas episode. So technically 14 in the 2014 year.
We hope so.
So looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a big year for Doctor Who. Okay, we've done 50. Now let's rock and roll and let's do another 50. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going to make another 50, but another 25 would be nice.
Who thought they were going to make 50
another
to
10
start
would be
with?
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Doctor Who, and there's really, I've tried to compare it to something in the U.S. We really have nothing to compare it to in our culture. But it's excuse me, that would be our father calling me, which is why I left my phone on. Hello, Father.
We're going to go ahead and record it.
We are recording a podcast. Are you ready for the film?
It's an hour away.
I haven't checked. That's up to you. Okay. Then that kind of answers that question. Is Dad picking us up or are we meeting him there?
Oh, we'll just meet him there.
We'll meet you there.
We'll bring the truck.
Okie dokie, we'll see you there. Alright, bye. That would be our call for Thor. We are going to need to meet at the movie theater at 1 o'clock.
Okay, so we need to start wrapping this up.
So wrapping up, it is going to be a big year for Doctor Who. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this new Doctor is going to bring.
Absolutely.
I think we're definitely due for a new Doctor. And as far as our segments this week, I think that we've pretty much covered most of what we need to cover without the segments this week. As far as Flix Picks, I'm just going to throw one out there.
Okay.
And if you haven't seen Thor 2, I definitely recommend going to see it. You can't really recommend it yet since you haven't seen it yet.
Right. Although I've heard it's much better than the first one was.
But the first one is on Netflix. So if you haven't yet seen Thor 2, go to Netflix and watch Thor 1 and then go see Thor 2. Whether or not you've seen Thor 1 already, it's always good to have a refresher right before you see the sequel.
For me, Flix Picks this week, I'm just going to quickly mention Netflix has a new category. It's called Random Picks, and I like that. It has nothing to do with anything you've ever watched before. It's nothing about your personality. It's just, hey, here's some random titles. They may be things you've seen. They may be things near kind of like what you've seen. They may have nothing to do with you whatsoever. Scroll through that, find something you've never watched, and watch it. And you might find something good. So, anyway.
And so there you go. So, like to thank our special guest, our father, for calling in.
Absolutely. It's our first. It's our first call in.
It's our first call in. Yay! Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Big thank you to Wizard World for inviting us to the convention.
Huge thanks to Wizard World.
Really hope that we can do that again, and not just Austin this time. Maybe we can do it in San Antonio too. Big thanks to all the people that showed up for the panel. We're so grateful that
and
you
you
came
guys
out and
were
that you
great.
got involved in the conversation.
You
Thanks
guys,
for helping out.
We really had a great audience. Very grateful to them. Thankful to everyone who's watched it online and offered their feedback too. I've gotten so much feedback.
And as we've always said, feedback is always welcome. We put it in the comments, send us a message, even if it's criticizing something.
If it's constructive.
Yeah, well, I mean, even non-constructive criticism, we'll take it, and I'll do something with it. And if you go look at the comments on one of your posts from Sunday, you'll see that I'm not a complete jerk. I think I was very respectful to the comment, but I also let him know that,
I thought that was a little not your comment.
Yeah.
His first comment was a little unnecessary.
I agree. It was an unnecessary
if you don't
comment, but I responded to it nicely.
You did. I thought you responded very well. And if you don't like something that we post in the sense of not the content, but just why the hell did you post that? Why the hell did you watch it?
I feel it was an unnecessary comment, but that's okay.
That's what we call trolling.
Yeah. But, I appreciate...
And trolling is a form of bullying.
At least we know that he watched it.
Yes.
So I guess there's something. But anyway.
There's always a purple lining.
Thank you to everybody who has watched it, who came to the con. Thank you to all of our new watchers and followers on Twitter and Facebook and all that. And thank you to my sister for taking me and convincing me that I needed to go and keeping me company for those couple of days. So, anyway. And thank you to Dr. Langley.
Yes. And thank you to everyone watching this. Yep. You guys watching it makes us very happy. So we hope you like what you see and that you keep watching.
There will be changes still coming, so keep your eye out for what we're going to be doing with Jackalopes Fire TV. Mm-hmm. Until next time, I've been Chuck. She's been Cilla. And thanks for watching.